She's from Niagara Falls.
I did not know that.
Yes,
There you go.
yes.
Yeah, so interesting. Thank you for that, Dave, and welcome everybody to Talking Niagara this morning. There you go. Okay, so it is Friday, May the 9th, and there is a new pope in town.
Yes,
He comes from Chicago.
yes. Robert Prevost, and he he became a priest, and he's from Chicago. His I forget his father is his father has two nationalities basically, but his mom's Latino, I think. In any case, he's an American,
Yeah.
and he did a lot of his early work, of course, in the United States, and then he moved to Peru, first for a year and then for 10 years. So he presumably knows Spanish, and he has very, very strong connections with Peru. So Peru has a claim on him as well. They have very many oh, very good thoughts about Rob Prevost, and he's been an effective uh, Catholic administrator in the country of Peru, and of course I think he was there during some of the uh, you know more terrible times in Peru when they had a dictator who who oddly enough is doing much. Uh, Trump is doing much what the dictator Fujimori did in Peru. So it seems to be kind of, you know, fitting that a pope who sort of witnessed probably the rise of a dictatorial power in Peru that lasted between 1990 and 2000, and now he is from America and he's watching the same sort of process happening in the United States. So it's
Mm.
very interesting, and they couldn't be more different. Um, Prevost is a very passionate, humanist, it seems to me, whereas Trump is the opposite. Trump is
Mm.
more Machiavellian. And
Yes.
so the contrast couldn't be more, oddly enough, it's real irony the way things are going. You have this very compassionate humanist type of
It,
person leading the Catholic Church, and you have the opposite leading
well,
the largest power in the United States or the world.
it's interesting. It's interesting. I remember when Pope John Paul was elected in the 80s. There was a lot of discussion about how there hasn't how for such a long time since the Pope has been from outside of Italy, and now we've had four in a row.
Yeah, and this is the only second English speaking pope. Um, the the I didn't know this, but the English pope that was, I think it was back in the 10 or 1100s, was actually an English speaker, despite the fact that um, the secular part of England was being run by French speaking Normans pretty much at that time. So he is the second speaking who his principal language is English. So that's kind of interesting too, particularly when English is the most universally spoke language on the planet.
Yeah.
Um, English as a second language is
Apparently, you just said he speaks Italian, Spanish, Latin, of course, and English, at least.
yes. Well, there's good it's good news all in all, because he is definitely an opposite face of Trump, where Trump is the leader of the most powerful um, secular power in the world, and the Roman Catholic Church is the most powerful single most powerful religious uh, uh, group in the world. So you have these Christian elements that uh, are offset by Trump's more secular Machiavellian type. So it's very interesting how this is all set up. It's almost like the big fella upstairs has sort of stepped in and made everybody aware of the two different, the two different Americans.
Yeah, but of course, Trump's rule is only for 4 years. The Pope could be, well, he's 69. The Pope could be there for potentially 20.
Yes, I think in nowadays life expectancies, of course, has gone way up.
Yeah.
And if Robert Prevost, Louis the 14th, they call him.
Yeah.
Now he's taken the name Louis the 14th.
Leo the 14th.
Leo the 14th.
Louis.
Yeah, no, he's not French. He's a pope. Yeah, so he's Leo the 14th, and he's chosen that name for a reason, and I forget.
Well, somebody once said to me that most Catholics, particularly those that start out, as fathers and that, all have chosen at some point during their early days, they've chosen their papal name if they ever to get there.
Yes, well, that is contrast to the pretext of humility. If you are a humble person, you wouldn't do that, but and priests and all that are supposed to be very humble. So that's sort of a. Yeah.
Well, I know it was a story that I heard one time many years ago. It doesn't mean to say that it's for real.
Yes, and remember,
there are plenty of humble priests, who never have any desire to do anything but, run their local church. In fact, there are probably some cardinals whose desire was never to do anything but run their local church.
Well, Pope John Paul I, the Pope that only lasted 33 days, and the Pope right after him decided to be John Paul II, as a kind of an homage to him. That particular Pope was extraordinarily surprised that he was elected Pope, and he was the ultimate of humble men. And the idea that he was murdered, John Paul I was murdered because he stepped into the boss's chair basically at a time where the Catholic Church was full of corruption, and they had.
I was going to say that's during the financial crisis, isn't it?
Well, it was back in the 70s, and what had happened was the Vatican Church was playing dangerous games of money laundering for very powerful criminal elements.
Yeah.
And they kind of looked the other way because the money that was coming in was big, and that was abhorrent to John Paul I. And he was going to do something about it. And he made that very clear, and suddenly he was gone. And of course, that was the time in which that particular criminal, I forget his name, was found hanging under Blackfriars Bridge in London.
I think it was actually 1981.
No, I don't think it was that late.
No, it was in the 80s. It was not in the 70s, because JP2 was actually born out of the Polish uprising, the Solidarność uprising, John Paul II.
Yes.
And then basing the dates upon knowing when Solidarność was 81.
He died. John Paul first died in 1978. So that whole incident was.
I think therefore there was a Pope in the middle between JP1 and JP2.
No.
Really?
No. The whole thing happened in the late 70s, and
Mm.
that is a mystery to this very day. I remember reading a book about it. Somebody gave me a book about um, John Paul the First being murdered, and I thought it was just one of these kind of clickbait, whatever the version of clickbait was back then. And so I said to the lady, I says, okay, I'll read the book, and she gave me the book, and I read it, and I was reluctant to read it because I thought it was going to be idiotic conspiracy theory stuff.
Yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't. The guy made a case that John Paul the First could
78.
easily have been murdered, and the kind of cover up. So one of the things that didn't happen, which always happens, was some kind of an autopsy, and the people who normally take care of the body didn't, and all this sort of stuff that happened. So it really did look like a cover up, or could be interpreted that way. And John Paul the First, being a very humble man and unexpected to have his whole thing was very much like Francis,
Yeah.
the previous
Yeah.
pope, just died. He wanted to take the church and bring it back more to its more humble beginnings, and to concentrate more on the poor and stuff. But John Paul First,
I always thought.
he found that the Vatican was messing around in the Vatican Bank with some
Mm.
very dubious.
I thought that was a few years later. Okay, it's weird how the memory goes, right?
Yeah. Anytime, anytime you think you're right, ask me and I'll confirm it.
Like I'm going to do that.
Confirm or deny it. Yeah. So,
Like I'm going to do that.
yeah.
Okay, so a story we didn't get to yesterday. There are 7 Niagara-based singers and musicians and writers that have been nominated for the 2025 Country Music Awards of Ontario.
Now, the one that stands out there is Hicks, and I know his mother. I went to school with his mother, and he's been. And I used to get, when I went to the Y, I'd bump into her every once in a while, and I get an update on his career. He goes around and he and he has many of these concerts. He's part of the country movement that was shifting country music more towards the early rockabilly and rock and roll beginnings, where country music, a lot of country music influences the country music singers, basically, like Elvis and Johnny Cash was an early rock and roll singer, and Jerry Lee Lewis has strong country roots. So he's part of that movement to shift to a more party-like, country-based rock kind of music. He's very, very good at it. He's this is I think is his 4th time that he's been nominated, or 11th time or something, and he's won it 4 times, I believe. So he went to A.N. Meyer School, and he has become very famous. He hangs out in Nashville. He at one time there, the singer of Aerosmith, I forget his name right off the bat, but he and Hicks were working together on songs and stuff like that, or proposed to. So that's the kind of credit this guy has. So I would say that's kind of a feather in Niagara Falls' cap, don't you think?
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Like earlier, just before the show began, Peter and I were talking about David Fromm, the conservative journalist, and he comes from Niagara Falls too. And if we have time, we'll get to his piece.
Yeah, because he's actually a Republican.
Yeah, but he's a Canadian. He was born and raised in Canada, and
oh, there you go.
Yeah,
we get him on the show. We need to get him on the show.
David Fromm, yeah. I don't know if he ever lived in Niagara Falls, but his mother's from Niagara Falls. She was the Roseburg. She was the very famous Barbara Frum, who I always remembered as one of the very first super effective anchors, CBC anchors, a female anchor. I think she would work with the CBC. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so it's good, and congratulations to our people. No, I'm not a huge fan of country music at all. Much prefer more rock than country, but hey, good luck to them all.
Well, Tim Hicks doesn't really care much if you like his stuff he's selling at other places.
Oh, I'm sure. And
But
actually,
there's others here.
well, working with people like Aerosmith, that's quite an honor.
Yes. Well, he was just kind of
Or
collaboration with the lead singer. What the heck's his name? For some reason,
Good question. It escapes my mind.
Yeah. So Ryan Langdon is another one. Along with Hicks, he's up against Robert Hyatt.
Are you talking about Steven Tyler or Joe Perry?
Steve Tyler. Yeah.
Yeah. There you
go. So he was. His mother had told me that they were talking with him and Tyler had met in Nashville, and they were thinking of collaborating. I don't know whatever happened to that, but that gives you some sense of the currency this guy carries with him. Like he's that well respected. Now, of course, he's the. There's others here we should mention: Ryan Langdon, Brian John Harwood, Nate Holler, Owen Rigling, who leads all artists with 6 nominations this year. Jeff Brown and Adrian Juris are both from the up for Musician of the Year. So it looks like it's pretty interesting. And this is Ontario, of course, the Country Music Association of Ontario Awards. And it says here, yes, no stranger to the show is Tim Hicks, who collects his 30th and 31st nomination over the past 11 years.
Yeah.
And
it proves he's a mainstay, right?
Yeah, as Male Artist of the Year and Songwriter of the Year. I don't know how many times he's actually won it, though.
Yeah. It proves he's a mainstay of the awards.
Well, 5 previous times. He's won as Male Artist 5 previous times. Yeah. I don't know if he's won the Songwriter one yet.
Yeah. And actually, it proves he's a mainstay artist. It proves he's solid. You don't get that many nominations if you're in and out of the industry.
Yes. So anyone you could see, Hicks has like these concerts that are real party time of concert where people go there and they dance kind of thing. They don't sit there and watch him. It's actually it looks to me when I look at them, they're a participatory type of concert where you go there and actually have fun dancing.
So it's line dancing and things like that when he's doing it.
I don't know if it's line dancing or not, but
I'm joking, of course. You know, hey, line dancing is a very specialized type of thing.
Anybody that does it loves it, though. It's fun.
Oh, I know. And some of these people go nuts over that, over line dancing. They do it every week. I remember when I was young, in probably 18, 19, 20, there was a friend of mine who was really into line dancing. Come, she said, you know, like, so I went one time and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Anyway, but anyone who's gone line dancing that I know of finds this an extraordinarily beneficial social event, because people go there, they learn the steps, and they have to do them together, coordinated, and they just love to get together and hang out with one another. And it sounds like it's fun all over the place. So it's kind of wonderful, actually.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, pretty well every one of those sessions starts with a person who warms up the audience by getting everybody onto the floor and actually teaching them the steps.
Yeah, and in a time when we are become more and more isolated behind our screens, our TV screens, our computer screens, and gaming screens, I think that was a nice thing that we actually get together among other people. Although I've never done it myself, I'm only going by what friends of mine that have had done it. Anyway, what else we got there? Uh-oh, freeze time. Freeze time. Oh, I'm going to have to get out of here.
Hey, Dave.
Are you there?
I'm here. I'm here.
I don't see your face, though.
No, I'm here and don't see my face because it decided to take my camera out. Let me just reconnect that one.
Anyway,
there we go. Oh yeah, okay. So we were talking about the Country Music Awards.
Yeah, we're pretty well done that now. And so, what else do you want? Where we want to go next?
Well, I was going to say Doug Ford, and we can cover this very quickly. Doug Ford is saying to Carney that he needs to extend an olive branch to the west.
Yeah, we have we're having an impression through the press that Doug Ford and Danielle Smith are fighting and are disagreeing all the time. Doug Ford put that to bed. He says, "No, she can phone me anytime. We talk all the time. We are very friendly and cordial." Yeah. Now, Doug Ford has put out a word there that I think everybody in Canada it welcomes. He says, "Look, it's time to show some love to the West," and he has reiterated what Danielle Smith
absolutely it's time to show some love to the West.
Yeah, so he has reiterated what Smith has said. Smith has said they've been treated terrible by the 10 years of Liberal government under Justin Trudeau, and he says that's got to change. He said, that's really got to change. We got to, we're looking for unification here, and we have to reverse the negativity that the Liberals dumped en masse on Alberta. Now, this is going to be an about face for the Liberal government, because aside from Carney, they're the same people. So they're going to have to change their minds, particularly the environmental minister. If he stays the environmental minister, he was pretty unrelenting in his ideas that Alberta's got to clean up their fuel and or their emissions and all this by certain times, and pretty much that's impossible. And Smith was irked by this. She tried to appeal to the Trudeau government, but the Trudeau government had no other place but Alberta to say that's where you got to clean up. It's really like shooting yourself in the foot when they did not take the advantage that they did on LNG. The Liberal government was warned. Look, we have natural gas we could liquefy, but the Liberal government made no attempts to go ahead and do that. So when Germany came knocking on the door and said, "Look, we can't get our gas from Russia anymore. Can we have yours liquid?" "Oh, we don't have it," Trudeau says, and he didn't look as if he was too interested in doing that.
Yeah.
That's a market that we lost, and the hurdles that the Liberal government put up around Alberta's in energy industry lost us a lot of money and market around the world in its misguided idea of moving towards a green economy too fast. And the Liberals were the typical ones. Well, you got to move towards a greener economy in Alberta, and don't worry about the jobs they'll be in the green economy. You will replace your oil jobs with green economy jobs. And when Alberta says, "Well, what ones are they?" and they just say, "Well, they'll just come. They'll just evolve."
Evolve, yeah. And that's the worst thing anybody can say is, well, they'll just evolve.
Yeah, it's like dumb statements like the tax cuts the tax increases will pay for themselves.
Yeah,
that's another famous thing he says.
Yeah.
So we have a very practical, business-oriented man in the at as a leader of the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to find some very practical, common sense, and that taking the words out of the Conservatives, but really practical, common sense, strong economy decisions by Carney. And he had better be able to rope in his Liberal Party to do that. He has an opportunity here to show the whole country that the Liberals can be more than just ideologues trying to force their ideas. Now, Carney, of course, he is very much in favor of a greening economy, and he sees the potential problems with the greenhouse effect and all that. But he's also a practical man.
Yeah.
You know, you don't. Yeah.
But it depends upon the way of doing it, and there's a recognition when you talk to a person. For example, just taking as an example. Okay, so you're looking at a shopping mall, let's say, for argument's sake. Oh, and you're run by a coal. You've got a coal, heating system in here. Well, you talk to the person and they say, how long is it going to take to remove your coal heating system and replace it with something more green? And the person says 5 years, and you say you got a year. That was Trudeau's approach. You've got a year. Whereas it's more practical to be saying, how long is it going to take? Listen to the experts and say, okay, let's get a plan in motion to make sure that this is gone in 5 and never comes back. Right.
Well, also, if you just tell them that you got available coal and it's cheap, and you've got a coal burning unit, and it's very reliable, and you come around and says, well, you got to replace it, and your replacement is going to cost you double what you're paying now.
Yeah.
And so if you complain about that, then they say, well, that's just too bad, because it's the responsible thing to do. Now, a Carney guy would come along and says, well, you say you need to change it in 5, take it 5 years. Well, we'll help you do it in 4, and here's some money some incentive money to do that. And here's some jobs. We'll hire the people in and around here to change it. So that's kind of an idea. Anyway, he's a much more practical man, and we'll see how he deals. I'm not so sure he has any objections at all of dealing with Alberta and making Alberta an energy superpower. His resistance is going to come from the now old-fashioned thinking of the Liberal Party. They were not practical. They were ideologically based. I mean, you could see that by their immigration policies, where they say, oh, you know what would be a great idea is have 30% of all Canadians born outside of Canada. Then that will diversify our country. Isn't that wonderful? Well, when you have strained economy and all that other stuff going on, and your production level is plummeting, it seems
It's not a
ridiculous.
good idea.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous to focus on something like that. That might be a good idea in the long run, but your immediate concerns is to build the
Getting
economy.
people back to work.
And the fact that they brought so many people in without initiating housing, which they said they would in 2015, tells you that the Liberal government was not a practical government. It was ideological based. It sounded good. It was very attractive to more modern people, thinking, oh, well, we got to deal with our diversity issues and all this other, and our climate issues and all that other stuff. Those ideas are nearly extinct right now until we get to the point where our economy is strong and the average Canadian is earning a decent wage. So that is the practical matter. Yeah, you have to build your economy first, and then build it in such a way to move it towards a green economy without damaging your everyday person. And here is Karen. I am honored to announce I have been chosen as Ontario Senior of the Year. Yahoo! Representing Niagara Falls. Woo! All right, Karen. All right. Well done. Well done. Well done. Yeah. Does it come with any kind of financial award? If it does, I'm your new best friend.
Somehow I doubt that, but yeah. Continue, Dave.
Yes. So Carney's very practical. They're meeting. The premiers are meeting, so things have got to get sorted out. Danielle Smith is finally just too fed up, so she is dangling
we
she
don't
is pushing not pushing cessationists, but reminding everybody that that's a clear possibility right now. When she has to listen to her voters, when 30 to 40% of Albertans are hopping mad and very disappointed that the Liberals won again, and feeling that they're going to be on the back stove again. Carney has work cut out for him. And what Ford said is true. The Liberals treated them terribly, and it's time to show them
got to make
bucket full of love.
Change direction. And Alberta, because Alberta has got such resources, and those resources are some that we need in the rest of the country as well. We need to get those resources piped here.
It's also a good reminder for Danielle Smith to realize that at different times in Alberta's history, when oil prices went low for long periods of time and the prosperity, the boom, and Alberta has had this boom and bust thing where everything's going rosy and people go out there to try to get jobs, and all of a sudden it goes flat.
Yeah.
So, and those times when it goes flat, they are relying on Canada. Now, she's also said she wants the same sort of payments that happen in Ontario and Quebec to be paid to her province as well. So, even though she is politically opposite of me in many ways, I do applaud her defense of the Albertan people and their economy.
Yeah.
So what else we got now? So that's that done. What's next?
So Karen got a certificate.
No money?
I doubt it.
Oh,
those sort of things come with a certificate. Yeah.
Well, all right. I'll pay for my own lunch next time we meet.
Right. Some Ontario mayors are against the giving out financial incentives to attract doctors.
Yeah, this is a big deal. We've talked about this before. right now, because the competition for doctors, we talked about how many nurses are not being, so yesterday it was nurses. We need a lot of nurses, and there seems to be too many hurdles for foreign nurses to get become nurses. Well, doctors are a big issue too. Actually, probably a bigger issue. More and more Canadians, particularly in more rural or northern areas, are going without family doctors. There's thousands of them actually, and they're each different community is trying to find strategies to attract the limited amount of doctors to their particular regions. Now, this article is saying, look, don't do that. They're trying to get that made illegal, basically. When areas, go ahead.
Yeah, Sault Ste. Marie Mayor Matthew Schumacher wants the federal government to outlaw the practice of giving financial incentive of municipalities giving financial incentives to bring doctors to their neighborhood.
Not only is she saying that the Ontario should not do that, she said that Canada nationwide shouldn't do that. But that puts smaller communities at an extreme disadvantage, because the bigger communities can offer more financial incentives. Like we talked about the big office buildings, the medical buildings, where the province sort of, or the region, builds them, and then the doctors just move in. So all their infrastructure costs, or their all that is all taken care of. So the computers, the building, the examination rooms, and all that are all incorporated.
Well, and there are actually there are corporations that deal with that sort of thing as well, that help the setup for doctors.
Yeah, but we're talking about the region, or the taxpayer responsibility here. So if you get a place like Niagara and the Niagara region, basically, and you can entice doctors into the Niagara region because you can build them a building, examination rooms, and everything, all those things that the doctor has to put up front, rent office space and all that, you can take care of that for them. You can give them an administrative staff, and you can give them a place to be, their office, and all those other things. Take those expenses away and make it easier for the doctors even to do what they have to do, because you take a lot of.
But of course, that's easily done in somewhere like Toronto, not so easy in Kenora.
That's the big thing. When you do that, you put the smaller communities in Ontario, particularly the ones that farther north and more isolated ones. Well, not even that isolated. They're still, like, even Thunder Bay would have a hard time coming up with something like that. So what you're doing is they cannot compete. They cannot compete with that. So it's extremely unfair. And of course, the doctors are going to take that offer. Oh, you're okay. So you're giving me a building. You're giving me, you're giving me office space. You've already done that for me. You've given me examinations rooms. You've already done that for me. All I have to do is walk in. It's a turnkey operation. So I just walk in, and I don't have to set up my office. I don't have to buy the computers. I don't have to do the filing space or whatever else I need.
Some of them actually even employ the secretaries, legal, the administrators.
Yeah, they could have a common administrative staff that's all shared.
Yeah.
So there you have it. It makes it a lot easier for a doctor to set up and begin. And of course, who wouldn't want to do that? If I was a doctor and I have to do the humdrum business part of it, that's holding me back too. I think, if anything, the government should build those things for the rural communities. Right now, it is the municipalities down here that are thinking of putting the upfront money as an enticement for these doctors to come, and offer them wage incentives and all that other stuff. In order to counter that, if anything, the Ontario government should go to these northern communities and do likewise. They can't afford to do it. they can't afford to do that to compete for this
Yeah,
stuff.
and you see, while Toronto can look at any individual neighborhood and build a building, and has a budget for every few years building a couple of $1 million building, places like those northern communities do not have that budget. And when you've got to go 200, 300, 400 kilometers to go to a doctor's office, that's painful.
Yes. So either remove the incentive program to make the playing field a little more level for everyone, or adopt it, and the province then would be building these places along the lines that the municipalities are already planning down here.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it in a nutshell, basically.
Well, we're
There's
one of
nothing
these
more to
smaller,
that, really.
yeah, we're one of these smaller communities here in Niagara that, we're bigger than many, but we're not big enough to actually attract doctors without such an incentive.
Yeah, there's an extreme competition for a limited amount of doctors. We don't have enough. And who is this? Hello, Peter. Good morning. It's a bit chilly. Yeah, it's a bit chilly but sunny. So we're going to get sun, but the air is going to be chilly because of a high pressure. Yeah. And anyone that has gardeners or stuff like that, be aware that you might get a little bit of frost in the next night or two. That might be the last time this year.
Yeah. Well, Peter is in what do you call it? Vineland area.
Okay.
So out in the country.
Okay. Welcome, Peter.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, I get it why mayors are against that. Okay. This one, moving on. 4 small modular reactors at Darlington cost $21 billion to build. I think this is our first foray into that, isn't it?
No, we've touched on the nuclear thing for some time.
No, I'm saying we've talked about it on a few occasions. I think this is the first time that Ontario's government is investing in it.
In the small modular type of nuclear reactors, yeah. So what they have decided to do, and ironically, well, they see the growing needs of power. So they're going to build these 4 modular reactors that will provide 1,200 megawatts going forward, because the demands for the province, power in the province, are going to be growing, obviously.
Yeah.
And so they have to make up now 1,200 megawatts. That's a fair amount. And so they know that they're going to have this need. I think it's can power 1.2 million homes or something like that.
Yeah.
We need them, and we're going to put them in the already existing nuclear power station in and around Darling. The real irony here is they're not going to use CANDU reactors or Canadian atomic technology, which is some of the best in the world. They're going to use the North Carolina-based modular reactor. It seems to be the one that fits the bill the best. And they're going to put them in, and it's going to cost $21 billion. And you know it's not going to cost $21 billion. You know it's going to cost $42 billion, because that's always what it is.
Yeah.
But they're going to start building. They already have shovels in the ground. This is a commitment by the Ontario government to go nuclear, and a commitment that they have decided to go with put the thumbs up on small modular reactors, which seems to be the way the nuclear fission is going. Smaller, more nimble modular reactors are the way to go. Sadly, though, we don't have anything here. We can build the big ones. We can build the big CANDU reactors, but these smaller modular ones, we don't have we don't have the smarts for that just yet. I expect you're going to find these smaller modular reactors here and there around the province eventually, because they are probably the only way to get emission-free power, um, because we've pretty much used up all of our hydropower. The other thing, of course, is wind and solar. And until we get wind and solar with storage is a very expensive way. And in the article it says, well, you think, well, why don't we continue with wind and solar and expand that? Well, we are. The problem is wind and solar combined with a storage facility cost much more per kilowatt hour than modular
Well,
the power from nuclear modular reactors. Oddly enough, after the initial expensive outlay, which is very expensive, the initial outlay for anything nuclear, thereafter it produces consistent power at a reasonable rate.
yeah, and part of the problem with wind and nuclear is that we're doing it wrong.
Wind and solar, you mean?
Wind and solar, I mean, we're doing it wrong, because we should be putting panels on tops of every rooftop in every city. We should be putting windmills on the tops of all rooftops in the city. Smaller windmills, but much more effective generators, and not these stupid ones around the country and taking up acres of otherwise perfectly good agricultural land.
Well, yeah, but the biggest problem with that is storage. And in order to have,
yeah, but that's a different question entirely. Yeah.
well, it's not different. It's matched with it, because you can do all of that. And the problem with that is you start to get surplus power out of your renewables, where you have nowhere to put it.
Yeah.
The thing about the next phase of renewables and wind and solar is to have storage areas, battery storage. And we find this has already happened in, ironically enough, the greenest state in the U.S. is Texas, which is normally known for oil, and their oil production in Texas is pretty much flat. They rely on oil coming from other places now. So what they have done, this very extremely red state that's not likely to listen to too much about global warming, has decided to go with renewables, wind and solar, and they produce more of that than anyone does. And it's not for environmental reasons; it is for financial reasons, because it's half the price of deriving energy from oil and gas.
Yeah.
You set them up.
Yeah.
And when the Biden government had put 100% tariffs on Chinese cars, the Chinese reutilized the batteries that were going to go into the car and started selling that battery technology to Texas for storage of renewables. So they are much more advanced on that too. So they have batteries basically that collect the power from wind and solar and then use it at peak periods. Not only do they supply the whatever power they can provide depending on wind and sun, but they store the power that and then utilize it during peak periods, which is brilliant. However, the tariff thing has put a real glitch into that.
Yeah.
So that's what we need here, and we haven't moved along there yet. We do need these storage facilities. Otherwise, the wind and solar that we do have, these renewables, come to a screeching halt. They can only facilitate so much. But it says in the article, even so, if we do go to the storage area, we have wind and solar, it still will cost us more than nuclear power.
Yeah.
Which seems to be weird to me, because the wind and the sun are inexpensive, but the technology to make the battery and then invert it into take the because when you charge a battery, it's DC power basically, and then it has to go through an inverter to go back into the power grid. And Karen Fraser is saying, is there a tariff if it comes from the States? They said each reactor is the size of a hockey rink. Well, let's put it this way. We will not put a tariff on it. We won't.
Not if it's for our own benefit. No, absolutely we won't.
No, we won't. We won't tariff it. It's counterproductive, basically, to buy something and then charge ourselves a tariff on it when it's for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Moving. And each contribute 500 million annually to economy in Ontario. Yeah. These reactors will provide clean electric energy with the first unit capable of powering 300,000 homes. Yeah.
Well done, Betty. You're up on that. And also, when it peaks, there's going to be like 18,000 jobs in the construction thing. So there's lots of jobs over the space of the construction of this. And then thereafter, I think it's going to sustain about 3,000 jobs. I can't remember the figures. I have to dig out the. So well done, Betty. She's read up on this. Well done. Now we have about 8 minutes left. Is there anything specific you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's talk about Robert Froome. Robert Froome is
David Froome.
David Froome. Okay. Who's, why did I say Robert? It's right clear up there. His name is David. He's basically saying this. It's an interesting video that's about 20 minutes long. And he's saying Trump's tariff plan is not workable. And he's a writer with the crikey, what is it? The Atlantic?
I'm not so sure. I think he writes for a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Now, who is David Froome? David Froome is the son of Barbara Froome. Barbara Froome, maiden name was Barbara Rosberg. She's one of the Rosbergs from here, right in this town. Barbara Froome went to Stanford Collegiate, Stanford High School, and David Froome is her son. And Barbara Froome was a leftist, basically. She was very much liberal and leaning left in her political machination. She's also the first, one of the very first female TV journalists. She was an anchor woman, and so she was a real groundbreaker there. And oddly enough, she comes from a socialist ideological background, but David Froome, her son, went the other way. He went conservative.
So he's a Republican, and what he writes for the Atlantic.
Yes. Now, David Froome is not a Trump maggot person. He's the old-fashioned Republican.
Yeah.
Basically, less government, controlled spending, and all of that. Now, he has been quite a critic of Trump. He sees Trump as kind of a dangerous anomaly, a person that can get votes, but once he gets in there, he really doesn't know what he's doing, and
yeah, and in fact, he's quite critical of Trump, and so his whole thing, David Froome, is basically saying Trump actually came across this idea about reducing tax and because of tariffs, but he doesn't actually even understand how tariffs work, and that's been something you and I have been talking about since Trump's election campaign last year.
Yes, Trump is relying on the ignorance of his own MAGA group and others in the United States by not very clearly pointing out that the tariffs will be paid by the American people. It's a tax on the American people. Even Stephen Bissett, when he was in front of a hearing when asked directly who pays for the tariffs, he tried to complicate the answer, and the guy that asked him the question, this is a yes and no question.
Yeah.
Or this is a very, very simple question. Who pays for the tariffs? And
The American people do.
yeah, and Bassett was convoluted in his, he wouldn't answer the question directly. And
Yeah.
it's a very, very simple answer. Tariffs are paid by the consumer.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
They're paid by the
Yeah.
American people, and
You,
the American businesses have to pay that tariff.
yeah. And for example, if you're buying a new iPhone and it comes from Japan and Canada's got a 25% tariff on Japanese produce, and that phone costs $1,000, now it's going to cost you $1,250. End of story. And you pay that charge. Sure, the people who sell it to you may do you a deal. Maybe you own, maybe they swallow some of that cost, but you pay ultimately.
Yes, and we found out that when Amazon added the cost in your receipt, you get a receipt every time you buy something, and on that receipt it shows you
Tariff.
the taxes you pay.
Yeah.
They added the tariff to notify their consumer that the price of the phone is $100 and the price of the tariff on it is another $25, and the price of ordinary sales tax is such and such.
Yeah.
They call that a politically hostile move. So basically what Frum is doing is kind of sort of revealing these kind of things that the Trump government is doing, and he's pointing out how unworkable the system is when you put on tariffs and upset the global economy the way he has. And basically, he's just it's a very, very sound. If you want to listen to David Frum, you can find him all over the place on YouTube and these little videos. You can also read his stuff. I was not too much of a fan of his uh, in other times because he was a speechwriter for Netanyahu, and I felt that was horrible. But when you listen to him, he is a very practical person, and he's an old-fashioned Republican. He's not a MAGA Republican.
Yeah.
He's a conservative voice. So anyway, he's pointed out a lot of the things that are unworkable, and he's also pointed out how Carney could go into a meeting with Trump and not have to do a whole lot of homework because
Yeah.
he already understands the workings of economy, being of course governor of two major banks and being a successful businessman and all that. So he knows economy, he knows how it
And
works.
he talked about going from hero to zero, from zero to hero in 90 days. About Carney's win in the Canadian election and how that was an important factor, not just in Canada, but even in America.
Yeah, so that impressed Trump. So basically, what Trump does not have, he has the ability to get votes, but he's kind of a dangerous economic thinker, and the people around him are loyal to him, but they're a little bit more smart when it comes to economics. What Frum has put out there that Trump's economic plan cannot work the way it is designed, and he's also married this with security. Now, one of the things that the Americans have rightly said that we have not paid enough amount of money for security.
Yeah.
But and of course, that's the big complaint that the U.S. has pointed out. But the U.S. generals have made it very, very clear that NORAD works very well and that the Canadians are a complete and equal participant in NORAD. NORAD is the defense system for North America, and it relies heavily on Canada, Canadian airspace, Canadian cooperation.
Yeah.
All of those
Well,
things.
in fact, actually, David Frum one of these people who was talking about why Trump's plan requires Canada, why Trump's plan requires Greenland, and it's all about that defense, the northern defense.
Yes. What he like? You just I don't know why Trump says what he does and why there is so illogical. He does rely on the ignorance of the American people, and unfortunately, he's going about this the wrong way, because basically what the Canadians are kind of looking for is more or less a North American market, a North American bloc, a cooperation bloc, and this might be much more enticing to Trump. Trump wants an isolated area. He wants areas of isolation. He wants the North America isolated block of power, and he of course wants to dominate that. And unfortunately, that doesn't really work. What it does is separate too much of the global economy that the Americans have actually built. But other than that, security is a big deal, because we cooperate so well with the Americans. And I watched a hearing about that recently, where the American military officials were talking about NORAD and how well they do cooperate with Canadians. So when they say that Canada needs the United States for security, it's also the other way around. We have been coordinating our security for a very long time.
But you think about it back in the 70s and 80s, when we had all of those big nuclear threat. Canada was the buffer zone for those nukes if they had ever come, ever been headed to America.
So North America's security is very well is a very secure area because of this unique cooperation between Canada and the United States. So the security argument is nearly groundless, the one that Trump talks about.
Yeah.
And the idea of becoming an isolationist area, that is, if it's going to work, it has to include Canada. So basically he says that Trump's ideas are unworkable, but he does see Carney being able to persuade him for more reasonable action, not only in just security, but as a trade bloc. Now he talks about, when we first got into NAFTA, that one of the arguments against that is we were giving away our rights to tariff and our rights to put customs on things. We were going to go with what the United States pretty much had. And because at that time, the United States was much more of a free market economy than we were, this was only going to be an advantage to Canada.
Well, exactly.
Now we're in a situation where they are becoming more isolate. So we may have to marry the United States and Mexico in a common tariff zone.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
The United States have a common tariff between Canada, the United States, and Mexico have a common tariff, but the goods between us are tariff free. But if we, that kind of thing,
Yeah, so that's actually something David Fromm concentrated a lot upon, and I see his argument there. But what he, of course, says is that if we've got those three countries in a tariff pact, then clearly the Americans will rule the roost about, defining what the tariffs are.
Yeah, but it might give us a little more flexibility because we're now a partner. Now we can't determine our own tariffs. We can't determine our own customs.
Yeah, but again, there will be
we're giving that power away for access to the American market.
Yeah, but again, for example, if we had a particular concern in the Canadian market, there'd be a route by which Canada could approach the other two nations and say, hey, we're being attacked on, let's say nickel, just for an argument's sake. Imported nickel is killing us, right? And there'd be therefore a method by which Canada could approach the tariff group, which would then define what the new tariffs would be, across the three nations.
Basically, it's this: we, in order to get, we become an economic zone,
Yeah,
where there is tariff free,
like the European Union is.
kind of, and it's
Yeah.
a tariff free zone between the three countries, but the power of applying so we cannot then independently go to India as Canadians. We can't independently go to India and say, this is the trade deal we offer you.
Yes, exactly.
And have a different one from the one that's in the States or Mexico.
We've got a tripartite, a tri-nation deal that makes up how we deal with the rest of the world. So we cannot have a Canada-Europe or a Canada-India deal. We have to deal with the tri-nation deal with any other country that we deal with.
Yes. So this takes away a lot of our own self-determination.
Yeah.
But the trade-off is that we would have a very powerful trading network that obviously would build wealth.
Yeah.
Now, the problem, of course, is the United States and its particular geopolitical power struggles, and its aptitude to get into long forever wars like Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff like that could affect us. But we cannot then go independently to India and say, yes, we have a special deal that we can make with you, and we can have a special tariff deal with you. We would have to, we couldn't do that. We'd have to say, if we went to India, we would have to say, we can give you a deal, but these are the conditions that we can't do anything about. This is the tariff that
absolutely
three countries. Now, then we could go to the other two nations to say, look, we feel that this particular reducing tariffs on India would be good for the whole group. Yeah. And you could convince them to that whole group then to make a special
deal with India.
Yeah. So exactly. it takes away our freedoms for self-determination in a lot of our economy. But on the other hand, the trade-off is the prosperity of North America as an economic unit. But Trump is the inhibition in that. It may evolve into that, but Trump's got to get out of the way. But in the meantime, Trump is in trouble right now. And one of the advice I think gave there was do not start making these deals until 2026.
Yeah.
Because the pressure on the Trump government is going to be more extreme.
He actually said, look, go smoke a pipe, go take a summer vacation, a long summer vacation. Let's just wait it out.
Yes, and he also joked that if you're walking around the trade negotiators and you find that someone's working more than 4 hours, send them for lunch.
Yeah. All right. Okay, and I think we're going to have to leave it there.
Without further ado, I bid you do not forget Gaza. Gaza is starting to get back into the news, but it is being ignored, and that genocide has to stop. And I don't know how it's going to stop, but never forget Gaza.
Yeah.
There's nothing much we can do, but as individuals, except maybe give donations to Doctors Without Borders or something like that. But do not forget Gaza. When I think of 2 children out east who got lost and they can't find them, and I'm thinking of those little children in the woods somewhere suffering and being afraid, and it looks as if they've probably expired. And I think of the thousands of children being frightened every night and every day by bombs and being hungry and all that. Don't forget that.